I was never one for melodrama, but if you've lived 72 years, survived wars of the heart, wars of the world, and the quiet battles no one writes about, you earn the right to tell your story with a little fire in it. My name is Margaret Hensley Maggie to anyone who's earned the privilege and until recently. I thought the most dangerous chapter of my life had already been written. I was wrong. It began again this past September, here in the dust and heat of southern Morocco, where I came to find peace among manuscripts older than most countries, and instead found betrayal sharpened into a knife pointed directly at my back. And the hand holding that knife belonged to the woman I once called my closest friend. Clara and I met more than 40 years ago, when we were both journalists chasing stories across collapsing borders and bustling city squares. We lived on cigarettes, deadlines, and the smug satisfaction that we were smarter than the men who doubted us. She was brilliant, I'll give her that. Quick with languages, quicker with lies, though I never saw the second part until too late. I had the steel discipline of an engineer's daughter, the stubborn patience to track down facts like they were deer prints in mud. Together, we were unstoppable. Or so I thought. When my husband died 10 years back, leaving me with grief like a house full of echoes, Clara was the one who reappeared at my door with soup and jokes that almost made me laugh again. I trusted her enough to share my newest Project 10 archive of rare Islamic manuscripts that had been left in my husband's care by an old scholar friend, a collection valued at more than $50 million in today's market. It wasn't the money that drew me. It was the words, the fragile pages carrying centuries of memory. I thought Clara understood that. Perhaps she did, but she also saw something else. Fortune, escape, the chance to rewrite her own ending at my expense. The first hint came like a whisper you'd try to ignore. I'd been cataloging the manuscripts late one night when I caught Clara watching me. Her gaze not on the words, but on the lock I was using to secure the archive chest. I brushed it off. After all, old friends are allowed to be curious. But in hindsight, her eyes lingered too long, too hungry. 2 days later, the accident happened. I was driving back from a small village north of Zagora, where a local calligrapher had been showing me pigment techniques. The desert road was empty, the kind of silence that hums in your bones. I don't drive like I used to Nîmes, cautious, deliberate. Which is why when the brakes failed on the sharp curve overlooking the wadi, I knew immediately it wasn't fate, wasn't age, wasn't my mistake. Someone had cut them. I remember the blur of sand, the wheel fighting me, the scream of metal against rock. I thought that was it, my final deadline. But life has a twisted sense of humor. The car flipped, yes, but landed wedged against a boulder instead of tumbling all the way down. I crawled out, blood on my forehead, knees shaking, lungs full of dust. And when the rescue truck arrived, Clara was there first. Her face a mask of shock just a beat too late, as if she had rehearsed it in the mirror. "Thank God you're alive," she said, clutching my hands. Her grip trembled, but not with relief, with something closer to rage. Rage that her plan hadn't worked. I swallowed my suspicion because I needed time. Time to be sure. Time to play the part of the grateful survivor while my mind raced ahead. The days that followed were full of whispers again. I woke in the hospital one night to find her rifling through my bag, her excuse prepared. "I was looking for your glasses," but my glasses were on the nightstand. And the nurse later told me Clara had asked unusual questions about the security of my manuscripts, about whether I'd insured them. Insurance, her word, not mine. That's when I began my own performance. I pretended to grow weaker than I really was, feigned forgetfulness, left false notes about transferring the manuscripts to a European museum. And Clara took the bait. I caught her one evening scribbling in her notebook, copying the false details word for word. My chest burned with betrayal, but my mind, the old journalist's mind, sharpened like a blade. If she wanted a game, she would have it, but on my terms. You might ask why I didn't confront her outright. Age brings wisdom, but also caution. If she had already tried to kill me once, cornering her without proof could end the story for good, and not in my favor. So I bided my time, even as my daughter Emily flew in from London to fuss over me. Emily never liked Clara, never trusted her. We fought about it years ago when I defended Clara's choices. Now Emily only raised an eyebrow as if to say, "See? I told you." The strain between us grew heavy, another weight on my shoulders. 'Cause how could I admit that my oldest friend was my would-be murderer? How could I admit I'd been so blind? Still, Emily's suspicion gave me strength. At night, when Clara thought I slept, I wrote down every detail. The way she lingered near the archive room. The calls she made in rapid French when she thought no one was listening. The glint of a forged key I spotted slipping from her sleeve. Piece by piece, I was building a story. And stories, as I've always known, can topple empires. The turning point came when I discovered the first missing manuscript. I had been meticulous, cataloging every page, every fragile spine. Yet one dawn, when I checked the chest, a volume was Guénon 11th century commentary I'd been especially protective of. I tore the room apart, hands trembling, breath shallow. It wasn't misfiled. It was stolen. And only Clara had the access. That night, I sat by the window of my desert villa, watching the stars burn cold above the dunes. My body still ached from the accident, my mind replaying the sound of those useless breaks. Betrayal cuts deeper when it comes from someone you once trusted more than family. But I wasn't broken. No, I was angry. And anger, when tempered with patience, can be the sharpest tool. So I began planning to expose her, to reclaim what she had stolen. To make sure the story of Margaret Hensley didn't end as the foolish old woman tricked by her charming friend. I would not go quietly. I would not surrender my legacy, or the manuscripts, or my life. Clara had chosen the wrong woman to betray. And if you're listening to me now, you already know. This is not a tale of defeat. It's a tale of survival, of outsmarting the devil you once welcomed into your home. Stay with me, because the next part is where the shadows truly start to move, where betrayal turns from whispers to open war, and where I discovered just how far Clara was willing to go for $50 million. The desert has a way of amplifying silence, turning every whisper into an echo that never dies. After the missing manuscript, that silence pressed down on me, thick with suspicion. I carried the weight like a second skin, smiling for Clara, nodding at her stories, even laughing at her old jokes, all while imagining my hands closing around the truth like a predator around prey. Emily sensed it first. She cornered me in the kitchen one afternoon, the smell of cumin and roasted vegetables filling the air. "Mother," she said, her voice low and sharp, "why is Clara still here?" I stirred the pot slowly, the wooden spoon trembling only slightly in my hand. "Because she's my guest," I answered. Emily's eyes, blue like her father's, narrowed. "She's not a guest. She's circling you. I've seen the way she looks at the lockbox." I didn't reply. What could I say? That my best friend had cut my brakes, stolen a manuscript, and smiled at me through it all. Emily would go to the police, and without proof, it would turn into a humiliation for me, a gift for Clara. No, I had to hold my cards closer than that. But that night I woke to the sound of glass breaking. My villa is old stone, its windows stubborn, not the kind to shatter in a breeze. I slipped from bed, heart pounding, and padded down the hallway barefoot. The moonlight poured through the arches, silvering the floor. At the far end, by the archive room, a shadow moved. I froze. The shadow bent low, fiddling with the lock. I recognized the slope of the shoulders, the fall of the hair. Clara, she cursed under her breath in French. A sound so familiar from our reporting days that it cut deeper now. I wanted to shout to confront her right there. But instead, I made a sound just enough to alert her. She jerked up, spinning toward me, eyes wide, mask slipping only for a second. Then her face softened into false concern. "Maggie, what are you doing awake?" I smiled, though my lips felt like cracked glass. "I could ask you the same. I heard something," she said quickly, tucking something small into her pocket. "A key, a tool. I couldn't tell. Thought I'd check before waking you." We stared at each other in the dim light, a silent duel. Then I nodded, stepping aside, as if I believed her. But inside, my suspicion hardened into certainty. She wasn't circling me anymore. She was already feeding. The following days brought more cracks in her performance. She grew bolder, asking about the insurance policy directly, as if my age had made me deaf or foolish. I played along, answering vaguely. But I also began leaving traps, false notes about potential buyers, invented email addresses scribbled on slips of paper. Each time I'd find the notes missing later, proof that Clara was biting down on the bait. Meanwhile, Emily grew restless. She started talking about taking me back to London, about hiring security for the manuscripts. Clara encouraged the idea, pretending to agree. But I knew what she wanted, to get me away from the collection so she could finish what she'd started. And then the digital sabotage began. I was never a technical genius, but years in journalism had forced me to adapt. I kept backups of every catalog entry, every image of the manuscripts stored on encrypted drives. One morning when I logged in, entire files were gone erased. At first I thought it was error, until I saw the traces, a login attempt from Clara's laptop. She was clumsy or arrogant or both. I printed out what remained and tucked the papers into a hollow in the villa wall, one of many little hiding places I'd devised. Clara might outmaneuver me with charm, but she would never beat me at preparation. It was Yusef who gave me the first real lead. A young artisan from the village, he'd been helping me restore the leather bindings, his hands steady as a surgeon's. One evening while working in the courtyard, he mentioned it casually. "I saw Madame Clara yesterday," he said, his Arabic accent curling around the French words, "at the souk, with a man I do not know. They were whispering about old books. Rare ones." I felt my breath hitch. "Are you sure?" He nodded, his dark eyes steady. She did not see me, but I know what I heard. That was the moment the conspiracy stopped being shadows and turned solid. Clara wasn't just planning. She was already moving pieces into place, already negotiating. I thanked Yusef, slipping him a folded bill, but he shook his head. "No, madame. I tell you because I respect you. You love these books." "She does not. Be careful." His words haunted me that night as I painted in the courtyard. Painting had become my secret solace again. The soft scratch of brush against canvas reminding me of younger years when color was my language. I painted the desert sky, streaked with fire at sunset, and in the strokes I poured my anger, my grief, my betrayal. Clara passed by, paused, and smiled. "I always envied your patience," she said. I never had the focus for painting. I wanted to tell her that patience was exactly what I had now. Patience and proof, growing stronger every day. But then came the theft that nearly broke me. Another manuscript, gone this time, a Sufi poetry collection, one of the crown jewels. I'd secured it myself in the chest, double locked, and yet it vanished. Clara feigned horror, clucking her tongue, suggesting perhaps I'd misplaced it in my weakened state. My hands shook with fury, but I forced myself to smile. "I'm sure it will turn up," I said. Inside, I was already planning my next move. If she thought age had dulled me, she was wrong. My mind was sharper now than it had been in years. Sharpened by betrayal, by survival, by the quiet promise I made to myself the night the car flipped. I will not be undone. That night, alone in my study, I whispered to the manuscripts themselves, fragile voices from centuries past. "You've survived wars, floods, thieves. You'll survive Clara too. And so will I." But Clara was watching, always watching. And I could feel the danger tightening like a noose. It is one thing to suspect betrayal. It is another to see it written in ink you cannot erase. After the second manuscript vanished, my nerves grew thin as the desert air at noon. I spent nights pacing the villa halls, barefoot on cool stone, rehearsing possibilities in my mind. Was Clara selling them already? Was she hoarding them elsewhere, waiting for the perfect buyer? I thought of the breaks cut clean through, of her hands shaking not from relief but fury when I crawled from the wreck. The pieces were forming a picture too ugly to ignore. I decided to follow her, not in the old journalist way, slipping through alleys with a camera, bribing porters at hotels. Age has made me less nimble, but not less clever. Instead, I set traps of information. A fabricated email printed on paper left half hidden on my desk. A note to myself about a supposed French collector flying into Marrakesh. Another about a European auction house willing to negotiate discreetly. Each one disappeared within days. Proof that Clara's hunger had reached the point where she could no longer resist. Yusef became my ears. He had friends in the souk, cousins in the port, uncles who traded goods across borders. One evening, as he stitched leather over a manuscript's spine, he spoke softly without looking up. "There is a man in Tangier," he said, "asking about books. Old, valuable. He uses a false name, but my cousin swears he is German. He asked if anyone could supply manuscripts from the desert." My chest tightened. Tangier gateway to Europe, crossroads for smugglers. Clara was casting her net wide. "Do you think she met him?" I asked. Yusef glanced at me, his young face serious beyond his years. "I cannot say." "But the timing. It is too close to be chance. I felt the old rush then, the pulse of pursuit, the journalist's fire that never dies. Betrayal might have broken some women my age, but for me it sharpened everything. Every instinct, every nerve. Clara had underestimated me, and that would be her undoing. Still, she tried her best to convince me otherwise. One afternoon she sat across from me on the terrace, her glass of mint tea, sweating in the heat. "Maggie," she began, her voice smooth as honey, "I worry about you. The accident, the stress. You're not as sharp as you once were. Maybe you misplaced the manuscripts. Maybe your memory is failing." Her words slid into me like knives. She smiled gently, as if it pained her to say it, but her eyes glittered with triumph. Gaslighting, pure and calculated. I leaned back, painting calm over my fury. "You might be right," I said softly. "Age catches us all, doesn't it?" She nodded sympathetically, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. But in her eyes, I saw victory. She thought she had convinced me, turned me into a doddering fool who would second-guess herself. Let her think it. The higher she climbed, the further she would fall. That night, I wrote everything in my journal, every theft, every lie, every suspicious act. I hid the journal behind the canvas of my newest painting, a storm rolling over the dunes. If Clara wanted to erase my mind, she would have to erase the evidence too. And I would not make that easy. It was Anna's voice that broke the next layer of illusion. My cousin, estranged for years, called me unexpectedly. Her voice came crackling over the line, sharp and impatient as always. "I heard from a friend in Paris," she said without preamble. "Someone's trying to sell manuscripts that sound suspiciously like yours." My heart lurched. "What friend?" "An old dealer. He didn't want to get involved, but he thought I should know. He says the seller is a woman, European, speaks French like a native. Does that ring any bells?" "Clara, of course." My blood ran hot, a mixture of rage and vindication. "Anna," I said slowly, "I need you here. Can you come?" There was a pause. "After everything between us, you ask this now?" "Yes," I whispered. "Because I cannot fight this alone." She sighed, muttered a curse, and promised to think on it. Even the possibility gave me strength. But Clara was tightening her grip. She began moving through the villa as if it were hers, giving orders to the staff. Rearranging furniture, inserting herself into every decision. Emily confronted her once, and I overheard. "You're not family," Emily snapped. "You're a guest. Stop acting like this is your house." Clara only laughed. "Your mother needs me more than she needs you. Don't be jealous, dear." The venom in her tone chilled me. She wanted Emily out, to isolate me, just as abusers always do. The final confirmation came from Yusef again. He slipped me a folded paper one evening, eyes darting nervously. "I followed her," he admitted. "She met a man near the port. They exchanged envelopes. I heard her say the word Tangier. Then she saw me, and I had to leave." I opened the paper. Inside was a quick sketch Yusef had made, the man's profile sharp and angular, unmistakably European. The sight of it nearly made me weep, not from fear, but from relief. Proof. Real proof at last. That night I confronted Clara. though not openly. We sat by the fire, the manuscripts locked away behind us, and I asked her about our old days, the wars we covered, the lies we exposed. "Do you ever miss it?" I asked softly. She looked at me, her smile slow. "Dangerous. Every day. But sometimes, Maggie, you have to stop exposing lies and start living them. That's how you survive." Her words hung between us like smoke. I said nothing, but inside I knew. She had confessed without confessing, and so I began to plan the next step, not just gathering proof, but setting the stage for her downfall. If betrayal is a knife, then by October, Clara had learned to twist it. She no longer bothered to hide her dominance in my villa. She answered calls meant for me, dismissed Emily's concerns with a wave, even began advising me on how best to secure the manuscripts as if I were the intruder and she the rightful guardian. The cruel genius of it was how she played her roles. To the staff, she was the efficient lady of the house. To Emily, she was the manipulative stepmother figure, needling her insecurities. To me, she was still the old friend with practiced warmth, but the mask slipped more often now. I would catch her staring at me with a calculation that made my skin crawl. The tension reached its breaking point the morning the police arrived. 2 uniformed officers stood at the villa gates, their expressions polite but wary. Clara welcomed them in with exaggerated surprise, clucking her tongue. "Oh dear, what's happened?" she asked, her performance impeccable. They explained quickly. An anonymous report claimed I was selling artifacts illegally. My manuscripts were said to be stolen heritage smuggled into Morocco without permission. The words made me laugh, a bitter sound, but inside I was ice. Clara had planted the seeds, and now they were sprouting. Emily leaped to my defense, her voice sharp. "My mother would never. She's been entrusted with these for decades." The officers were sympathetic, but procedure was procedure. They searched the archive, checked the papers, asked me questions in careful French. I answered calmly, presenting my documents, though my hands trembled when I handed them over. All the while, Clara hovered in the background, her lips pressed together as if hiding concern. But I knew that look. It was satisfaction. When the officers finally left, having found nothing incriminating, Clara turned to me with false relief. "What a terrible misunderstanding. You really must be more careful, Maggie. People get ideas, you know." I wanted to slap her. Instead, I smiled. "Yes, people do." That evening, I called Anna again. "It's worse than I thought," I told her. "She's involving the police now." Anna snorted. Typical Clara, always knew she'd sell her soul if the price was right. "I'm booking a flight." Relief flooded me, though I also braced for the storm Anna always carried with her. We had been estranged for years after a family quarrel over inheritance, her temper clashing with my stubborn pride. But blood and betrayal have a way of erasing old grudges. When she arrived days later, storm was exactly the right word. Anna swept into the villa in a whirl of luggage and curses, glaring at Clara as if she'd come armed with knives. "Well, well," she said, dropping her bag. "If it isn't the snake herself." Clara blinked innocently. "Anna, how lovely to see you." Anna laughed, sharp as glass. "Save it. I know what you're doing. And I'll be damned if I let you finish." The air crackled between them. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. Clara was a master manipulator, but Anna was immune to her charm. Watching them spar was like watching fire meet eyes, dangerous, unpredictable, but glorious. Still, Clara adapted. She began whispering to Emily, planting doubts. I overheard her once in the courtyard. "Your mother's judgment isn't what it used to be. She's confused, vulnerable. Maybe she needs protection. Legal guardianship, perhaps?" Emily snapped back, but I saw the hesitation in her eyes later. Seeds again, watered daily. That night I gathered Emily and Anna, showing them my journal. Page after page of evidence. Every theft, every suspicious act, every fabricated trail Clara had followed. Emily's eyes widened as she read, her anger shifting from me to Clara. Anna slammed the journal shut. "Good," she said. "Now we hit her where it hurts. Proof, Maggie. We need undeniable proof." I nodded. Proof that had always been the goal. But how? Clara was cautious, too skilled to leave obvious traces. The answer came unexpectedly from Youssef. He appeared at the gate one evening, his face tense. "Madame, I saw her again." With the German, this time she gave him a manuscript. "I swear it." My breath caught. "Did you see which one?" He hesitated. A small volume bound in red leather. Poetry, perhaps. The Sufi collection. My heart sank, but the despair lasted only seconds. Proof? This was the proof we needed. "Can you find him again?" I asked. Youssef nodded. "Yes, but it is dangerous. These men, they do not forgive." I placed my hand over his. "I know, but you're not alone. We'll do this together." Clara must have sensed the walls closing in because her tactics grew crueler. She left doors unlocked to suggest my forgetfulness. She moved objects from one room to another, then asked pointedly if I'd lost them. At dinner, she'd sigh dramatically, remarking on how fragile I seemed these days. One night, she cornered me alone in the study, her smile brittle. "Maggie," she murmured, "maybe it's time to rest. Let me handle the collection. You've carried it long enough." I looked her straight in the eye. "Over my dead body." Her smile widened, a flash of teeth. "If that's what it takes?" The words hung heavy, more than a threat and admission. I shivered, but my resolve hardened. Anna began strategizing like a general, drawing up plans on scrap paper. "We'll catch her in the act," she declared. "Set a trap in the archive. Cameras, recordings, the whole lot." Emily nodded eagerly, fire returning to her eyes. For the first time in months, my family stood with me instead of against me. Clara had drawn her circle tight, but in doing so, she had forced mine to close ranks too. The storm was coming, and this time I would be ready. The trap was set, but as with all traps, the waiting gnawed at us. Anna prowled the villa like a lioness, barking orders to the staff, double-checking locks, muttering about camera placement and signal jammers. Emily hovered between us, torn between fear and exhilaration. I kept busy cataloging manuscripts again, the act grounding me. Though my hands trembled whenever I touched the red leather volume I feared was already gone. Clara, of course, sensed the shift. She floated through the halls like a queen in exile, her smiles strained, her remarks sharper. "So many changes," she murmured one afternoon. "Almost as if you don't trust me, Maggie." I didn't answer. Silence was my weapon now. But I could feel her eyes drilling into me as I brushed dust from the manuscripts. The weight of her suspicion heavy as stone. The near-death moment came without warning. It was late. The courtyard bathed in the soft glow of lanterns. I'd stepped outside for air, the heat of the villa suffocating. The night smelled of jasmine and sea salt. I was halfway across the flagstones when I heard a faint scrape of shoe. Leather dot, then hands shoved hard against my back. I stumbled, arms flailing. The well loomed in front of me, its ancient stones slick with moss. For a heartbeat, I saw my reflection in the black water below, wide-eyed. Mouth open in a silent scream. Anna's voice shattered the night. "Maggie!" She collided with me from the side, sending us both sprawling across the courtyard. My palms tore against the stones. Pain flared in my hip. But I was alive. I rolled over, gasping, and saw a shadow dart into the villa. Too quick to catch, but the perfume that lingered in the air was unmistakable. Clara's perfume. Anna helped me up, her hands shaking. "She tried to kill you," she hissed. "Your own friend." My knees buckled, but anger steadied me. "Not a friend," I said. "Not anymore." The next days passed in a blur of paranoia. I barely slept, haunted by the near miss. Every creak of the floorboards made me startle. Every shadow seemed a threat. Yet in those sleepless hours, something stirred inside me, an old passion I hadn't touched in years. Painting my easel had gathered dust in the corner of the study for nearly a decade. But one dawn, unable to bear the dark silence, I dragged it out. I mixed colors with trembling fingers and let the brush move. At first, the strokes were wild, almost violent slashes of red and black jagged shapes. But slowly a rhythm returned, muscle memory guiding me dot by sunrise. A figure had emerged on the canvas, a woman standing tall in the ruins, her face streaked with shadow, but her posture unbroken. She looked like me, but stronger, defiant. Emily found me there, paint smudged on my cheeks, tears streaking down. She placed a hand on my shoulder. "It's beautiful, Mama." I laughed softly. It's survival. That canvas became my anchor. Each day I painted more colors, brightening, shapes, sharpening. The act steadied me, reminded me who I was before Clara's poison seeped into my life. I was Maggie, the botanist who had hiked mountain ridges in storms. The woman who had cataloged fragile manuscripts by candlelight? The mother who had raised a daughter against all odds? I was not a victim. Still, Clara did not relent. She grew bolder, her provocations more obvious. She left wine open on the counter, whispering that perhaps I'd drunk too much. She hid my journal for a day, then returned it as if she'd found it carelessly misplaced. At dinner, she smiled sweetly and remarked, "Funny how memory plays tricks at our age, isn't it, Maggie?" Anna nearly leaped across the table. "Say that again, and I'll make you eat those words." But Clara only sipped her wine. Touchy. The tension reached its peak the night Youssef returned with news. He'd tracked the German collector to a villa outside Tangier. The red leather manuscript had been seen there, displayed like a trophy. Proof? I clutched his hand. "You're certain?" He nodded. "Certain." Anna's eyes gleamed. "Then it's time. We set the trap now." The plan was brutal in its simplicity. We'd place a decoy manuscript in the archive, wired with a hidden camera. Clara wouldn't resist, not with her greed gnawing at her. When she reached for it, we'd have everything we needed. But Clara wasn't stupid. She knew we were watching. So we made it real enough to tempt her. I spent days crafting the decoy, binding it in leather, staining the pages with tea, inscribing verses in careful calligraphy. My botanist's patience served me well. When it was done, even I had to squint to remember it was false. The night of the trap, the villa held its breath. Anna pretended to sleep. Emily sat with me in the study, her hand gripping mine. The camera blinked silently from its hidden place on the shelf. Hours past midnight. 1, 2, dot, then the faintest creak of hinges. Clara slipped into the archive, a wraith in silk. She moved with practiced ease, her fingers brushing spines until they landed on the decoy. I held my breath as she pulled it free, her eyes gleaming in the lamplight. She opened it, scanning the pages, her lips curling into a smile. Anna burst in. "Got you?" Clara froze, the manuscript clutched in her hands. Her mask shattered. Gone was the warmth, the charm. What remained was pure, cold malice. "You fools," she spat. "You think this will stop me? Do you even know what these are worth?" Anna lunged, but Clara slipped past her, quick as a snake. She bolted through the villa, the manuscript clutched tight. Emily chased, shouting, "Stop." I forced my legs to move, my breath ragged. We thundered into the courtyard, the same stones where she had nearly killed me. Clara spun, wild-eyed, cornered at last. "Stay back," she hissed. "I'll burn them all before I let you win." For a moment the three of us faced her, the night air heavy, the trap sprung but not yet sealed. And I knew, with every fiber of my being, that the final confrontation had begun. Clara stood in the courtyard, clutching the decoy manuscript as though it were her passport out of hell. The moonlight painted her face in silver streaks, hardening the lines I had once thought of as familiar, friendly. Now they looked carved by greed and venom. Her eyes flicked between Asana's clenched fists. Emily's trembling rage, my paint-stained hands gripping the railing. For a split second, she almost looked cornered. Then she smiled. "I built this with you, Maggie," she said, her voice steady, too steady. "Every contact, every buyer, every lie. Do you think they'll believe you now? A jealous old woman accusing her friend of theft. You've no proof. No one will side with you. But her mistake was underestimating me, wonderestimating the years. I'd spent learning patience in labs and archives, underestimating the discipline of cataloging fragile truths. She didn't know I had already woven her words into a net. I tapped the pin on my blouse. The tiny camera blinked red, recording every syllable. "Oh, Clara," I said, my voice carrying a bitterness I hadn't meant to show. "Proof has been my life's work, and you've just given me everything I need." For the first time, her mask cracked. She stepped back, clutching the manuscript tighter. Her voice rose, sharp as broken glass. "You won't take this from me." Anna advanced. "Drop it, Clara, now." But Clara didn't drop it. She ran. The chase tore through the villa's bone-stone corridors, echoing with the slap of feet, lanterns swinging wildly. My lungs burned, my joints screamed, but adrenaline carried me. She darted into the archive. A fatal mistake. She thought it was her domain, but it was mine. I knew every shelf, every shadow. Board. She skidded to a halt before the main cabinet, the one where the genuine manuscripts lay. For one heartbeat, she looked like a child again, caught stealing sweets. Then her face twisted into fury. "If I can't have them, neither can you," she screamed, yanking a lighter from her pocket. Flame hissed to life, tiny but hungry. My heart stopped. No. Emily cried, rushing forward. I lunged, slamming into Clara with the strength of fury, knocking the lighter from her grip. It clattered across the floor, sparking against the stones. Anna stomped it out before the flame could spread. Clara fought like a cornered animal, nails clawing, fists pounding. I felt her fingers rake across my cheek, felt the sting of skin breaking. For a terrifying moment, I thought she might overpower me, but then I remembered my rediscovery painting. The strength I'd felt, the flow, the patience. I shifted, not resisting head-on, but redirecting, the way brush met canvas, letting her own momentum undo her. She slammed into the shelf, winded. The decoy manuscript tumbled from her grasp. I pressed my weight down, panting. "You spent years plotting my destruction, Clara, but you forgot one thing." She spat blood, eyes blazing. "What?" "I've survived worse than you." Anna cuffed her wrists with the zip ties we'd hidden in the archive drawer. Clara thrashed, but it was useless now. Yusef appeared in the doorway, breathless, holding his phone aloft. "Police are on their way." "The recording gets uploaded." Clara sagged, her rage turning to poison words. "They LL free me. Money always wins." But I looked around. Emily's tear-streaked face hardened into steel. Anna's fury tempered into resolve. Yusef standing guard with the silent pride of the young protecting the old. And I realized money wouldn't win this time. Truth would. When the police arrived, Clara's defiance cracked. They led her away in handcuffs, her protests echoing down the stone halls. "It's mine." It should have been mine. Silence fell heavy after she was gone. Emily collapsed into my arms, sobbing. Anna leaned against the wall, drained but smiling grimly. Yusef simply nodded, the quiet satisfaction of justice served etched on his face. I sank into the old chair by the desk, exhaustion flooding me. The archive felt different, not haunted, not fragile, but strong, enduring. Like me, yet victory wasn't clean. Bruises darkened my skin, scratches burned across my cheek, and grief gnawed at me for the friend I had once loved. Betrayal left scars deeper than the physical. But as I looked at my canvas, the woman in the ruins, standing unbroken eye, knew what came next. Survival wasn't enough. I had to rebuild. That night, I addressed my viewers for the first time directly, speaking into my old recorder as Emily filmed. My voice was raw but clear. If you've made it this far, you know betrayal can come from the faces you trust most. Mine wore the smile of a friend I once called sister. But listen, to me, betrayal doesn't have to be the end. Sometimes it's the fire that forges you stronger. Share your stories in the comments. Let others know they're not alone. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Because every woman who has survived deserves to be heard. The villa felt hollow after Clara was taken away, as though her absence had left a jagged wound in the walls. For weeks, silence was both a balm and a torment. I painted more than I slept, canvases stacking against the study walls, each one a variation of the same theme: survival, defiance, rebirth. But the true reckoning came in the courtroom. Tangier's courthouse was a pale stone building that smelled faintly of dust and salt. I walked in with my head high, Emily at my side, Anna a solid wall of determination behind me. Yusef sat in the gallery, a quiet sentinel. My heart hammered, but I felt stronger than I had in years. Clara was let in wearing beige prison garb instead of silk. For a moment, my heart twisted. I remembered our shared dinners. The laughter, the way we had once finished each other's sentences. But then she turned, her eyes still burning with entitlement. And the memory soured. The trial was long, exhausting, but truth has a way of outlasting lies. The recordings we captured in the archive played for the jury, Clara's voice dripping with venom as she admitted her greed. The stolen manuscript traced back to her buyer in Tangier. The fingerprints, the bank transfers, the messages she had thought deleted. Piece by piece, her empire of deception crumbled. Her lawyer painted me as unstable, too old, too paranoid to be trusted. An elderly woman with fading memory, he said, gesturing toward me. I stood, steady, my voice clear. Yes, I'm 71 years old. My joints ache, my hands tremble sometimes, and I forget where I left my glasses. But I have not forgotten who I am. I am the steward of knowledge, of history, of truth. And truth does not fade with age. It endures. The jury believed me. When the verdict came guilty on all counts, Clara's face finally broke. Rage twisted into despair. The mask gone, leaving only the hollow woman beneath. She was sentenced to 15 years with no chance of early release. Justice does not erase pain. On the steps outside the courthouse, Emily held me close. "She was your friend once," she said softly. I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. Yes, but friendship cannot survive greed. And I survived her. Anna lit a cigarette, her hand still shaking. "You did more than survive, Maggie. You won." In the weeks that followed, life began to knit itself back together. The manuscripts were secured in a foundation under my name, protected for future generations. Emily moved back into the villa temporarily, helping me catalog and digitize them. Anna stayed too, though she never admitted aloud that she needed the company as much as I did. Yusuf became a constant presence, teaching me the finer points of book restoration while I taught him the patience of cataloging. And me, I painted. The Woman in the Ruins became a series, a gallery of resilience. Friends encouraged me to show them publicly. At first, I balked, embarrassed. But then I realized painting wasn't just survival anymore. It was testimony. Proof that creation could bloom even after betrayal scorched the earth. That realization planted the seed of my next chapter. I decided to start a mentorship program for young women journalists and archivists in Morocco. A safe space where they could learn, share, and grow strong enough to resist the Claras of the world. With Anna's sharpness, Emily's drive, and Yusuf's dedication, we began drafting plans. We called it the Archive of Voices. On the day we announced it, I sat before the camera again, my paint-stained hands folded in my lap. My voice was calm but firm. I survived betrayal by someone I loved. I nearly lost my life, my legacy, my history. But instead, I found strength I didn't know I still had. And I will not waste it. If you've been betrayed, if you've been silenced, know this: you are not broken. You are becoming. Share your stories in the comments so others will know they are not alone. And subscribe, because this channel isn't just mine anymore, it's ours. Together, we'll make sure no woman's voice is ever buried. The comments flooded in. Women from across the world sharing their scars, their survivals, their victories. I read them late into the night, tears running freely, painting their words into the background of my next canvas. For the first time in years, I felt not just alive, but forward-looking. My life wasn't ending in betrayal, it was beginning again in community. As for Clara, she faded into the background of my story, a warning rather than a wound. The manuscripts remained safe, the villa alive with new energy, the courtyard no longer a place of fear but of gathering. And me. I stood in front of my easel, one bright September morning, brush poised hard steady. I smiled at the canvas. The woman in the ruins was no longer alone.